The Human Adventure.
Presented by the Mutual Broadcasting System with the University of Chicago for America's radio audience.
These Wednesday evenings, through science and scholarship, enter with us upon a new search toward the fuller understanding of our universe, ourselves, and our society.
Our host is Ernest Cadman Caldwell, president of the University of Chicago.
Our story is the story of man's search for knowledge, which is science, his search for wisdom, which is scholarship, the adventure in ideas, which is the human adventure.
This hour, the story of a mass movement of peoples unparalleled in human history.
This night, from a work of university scholarship, the first great phase of the Atlantic migration. The land is England, the place a waterfront street before a quayside tavern. To the piping of the fife and the roll of the drum, a ship's quartermaster beats for recruits, holds out the promise of travel, gold, adventure.
Now then, lads, who's for fame and who's for fortune? Who'll sign aboard as bold a brig as ever sailed from merry England? Bound for adventure and discovery we are, and a tidy bit of looting do we take a Spanish plate ship or a Johnny Crapaud. Come aboard, lads. Sign on, me hearties. Who's for the new world in a company of gentlemen adventurers?
This, for 100 years, is a familiar European pattern. The recruiting of the reckless, the venturesome, the wild youth as professional seamen and men-at-arms for service in the new world.
Step up, lads. Would ye mind, shop, follow the plough all your days, when you might well sail the seas to foreign parts? Would ye rot in a debtor's prison, when ye might own your own slaves in America, called Virginia? Come aboard, lads. Now who's for fame and who is for fortune?
Beginning with the Spanish, continued by the French, Dutch, and English, the first expeditions to America are armed forays. Their purpose not so much settlement as exploration, not colonization, but conquest.
For the glory of God and the advancement of the Christian faith, we do solemnly and mutually covenant and combine ourselves together into a civil body politic for our better ordering and preservation.
The day, November 11th, the year 1620. 34 Puritan colonists, 7 indentured servants sign the first written English Constitution aboard the Mayflower. The new land becomes a place of refuge, first for religious and later for political minority groups.
He'll answer my questions, McWhorter. I'm agent for the planters out there. Presbyterian, is Scott from Ireland, right?
Aye.
Skilled in the linen trade?
Aye, or to work in the land. Either.
Willful to go to America? Willful to work in a plantation in Virginia?
Aye. You as agent are to pay ship passage. 8 pounds.
You understand you're to be bound in service until the amount is paid back? It's likely to be 4 or 5 years
You
later.
talk too much. I'll sign. Give us the paper.
Thus, an indentured Scotch-Irishman pledges his labor in advance for passage to America. The indenture system is the foundation of economic life in the tobacco colonies for nearly a century. And of New England for an even longer time, the word goes round in Puritan eastern and midland counties of Old England.
It's artisans does best in Massachusetts. Shipwrights, house carpenters, blacksmiths, bricklayers, the letter says.
True, Cousin Nathaniel writes the people are farmers, fishermen, sailors, and such like. They prosper.
And for women, there's call for domestic servants. They marry well. Merchants, too, they need.
Ha! Merchants, indeed. Dreaming you're in New England, are you dreaming you're a wealthy merchant, Jim?
It's happened to others. There's trade out there. There's merchants going from here. There's men of money going, too.
Oh, certain a few for to buy land and do business. But we are for work, Jim.
Most people is for work there, Laurie. Most people can come to be of the middling classes in New England.
First the adventurer, then the dissenter, later the laborer and artisan. These typical Europeans are those who embark for America. Only a single class, the Negro slave, is brought and remains in bondage. Yet in actual numbers, in any one year for 150 years before the American Revolution, the muster of immigrants is small. For generations, the colonies along the Atlantic seaboard derive their principal increase in population from their own natural growth. Not until new forces make themselves felt, not until the old ways become intolerable and the new world a vision of hope, do the common men and women of the British Isles and of the continent venture upon a new life overseas. Indeed, it is not until 50 years after the American Revolution that the true mass migration, the Atlantic migration, takes form and makes its entrance upon the stage of human history.
And now, your host on the human adventure, Ernest Cadman Caldwell, president of the University of Chicago.
It is fitting that this first program of the new series of the human adventure should be a dramatization of the search of the immigrant for a better life. Together on these programs, you and the university will share in the great adventure of ideas and of peoples. Many of our programs will tell the personal story of heroes in that adventure against darkness of mind and soul. Men from Greece like Thucydides and Socrates, men from England like Chaucer and Milton, and American leaders like Thomas Jefferson. Other programs will report the efforts of men of science to understand and to cope with the forces of nature. Men like Darwin, Aristotle, Einstein, and Harvey. We do not propose to make known to you the latest gadgets and discoveries of the scientific laboratory. We do propose to remind you of great truths, of the struggles of men for a better life, as in tonight's dramatization of Professor Marcus Lee Hanson's study of why the European immigrant came to America. Tonight's story will report on a great movement that is part of the heritage of America, the story of one of the important movements in human history, the tale of the early European migrations to this country. This is the story of the movement of the culture and tradition and ideas of the old world into a new Western world, America. Obviously, this is a story of Europe as well as America, for the story of the immigrant begins in the old world. The origins and motivations of the first Atlantic migration, the hopes and backgrounds which have become the heritage of America, are in this story. The University of Chicago, like all American universities, is interested in studying and presenting to the American people their heritage, in interpreting this great heritage for the enrichment of American life today.
Now the continent is Europe. Now the year is 1815. This bitter winter from Moscow to Gibraltar, a peace of exhaustion prevails over a war-harrowed land. The torch of the French Revolution is dead. The little dictator who strutted in his corporal's coat is an exile on St. Helena. On the continent, a score of princelings reascend refurbished thrones. Yet still the seeds of liberty, equality, fraternity live on deep within human hearts. For the old world of noble and peasant, of master and man, of privilege and service is dead also. Only for a time will its ghosts walk in the Congress of Vienna. Over the land of Europe in 1,000 villages.
The old lord is back in his old castle. This day the clergyman was here for his tithes.
So we must bow and curtsy once again. This is filthiness.
The emperor made nobles by the dozen. A tailor's son, a grocer's lad, a village notary. He made them generals. The new nobles began coming enough.
The people raised them up, emperor or no emperor.
Yes, and the people pulled the old nobles down in the days before this Napoleon.
Napoleon. Huh. He and his family fattened like pigs. And when the old boar was fat enough, why a Habsburg daughter was a bride for him. We've enough of nobles, new or old.
We've enough of tithes and taxes. There is talk in the market square, wife. Talk of America.
Heard first in England, here is a sound more significant than the boom of cannon. This is the hiss and clank of the first steam engine, the rattle of power machinery. Here is another sound, a strange bugle call for the grim new age, the first note of the factory whistle. To the rhythm of the machine, to the harsh discipline of the primitive factory system, the Industrial Revolution shatters the age-old pattern of European folkways.
Get on with your work, Thomas Wilkins. There's no dawdling over my machines.
I'm doing what I can, Master Carter.
Then do better if you plan to work here. The whistle blows before daylight. It blows again after sunset. Between daylight and dark, you'll work, or there are others will take your place, and be thankful for it.
I know, Master Carter. I'm bringing the 2 boys to the works tomorrow. 9 and 11 they are. They'll make prime hens.
Bring them, then. We'll put them to work. Aye, with Napoleon beaten with every hand turned to useful tasks, these are great days for old England.
Over the crowded cities, the smudge of industry. In many a village, the modest church spire topped by a new factory chimney. Yet on the land of Wales, of England, of Scotland, new masters of the earth, new demands upon the soil, new farming methods fill an overflowing measure of distress. In Scotland,
stand back now. The cut is to come down. Finish it over the crowbars, men.
It's our own face. You'll not level it to the earth.
'Tis the way we clear land for pasture, ma'am. All level and smooth for the grass to grow.
But it's our home, Jamie. But, Jamie, I cannot bear to see it leveled.
No, lass. 'Tis no longer ours. We have been paid in siller.
Aye, it is the same in muckle of Scotland, ma'am. The lairds are clearing off the small holdings, even the villages for sheep pasture.
Aye, it's sheep, and not humans the lairds will be raising up in Scotland. It's sheep we are to stand by and let them.
'Tis not rye or barley raised now. 'Tis sheep that's wanted.
If it's sheep is wanted in Scotland, we'll go where men are wanted. We'll not sweat for a master in England, or fish for herrings, or burn seaweed to keep from starvation.
Aye, so the talk is in many places.
The ships are leaving, and we've siller.
We've siller to take us a far away from a land of sheep and levelled villages.
in Holland, Switzerland, Belgium, the Scandinavias, artisan and townsman stir against caste and privilege, smolder with a slow anger against old ways, old oppressions. And in Germany, in the Rhine Valley, in the towns of the Palatinate, in Hesse and Baden and Hanau and Bavaria, peasant and professional men alike chafe under a half-feudal way of life. The thrifty farmer listens to a new voice, a hint, a dream, a whisper of new land in a new world.
In America is land, Anna. Land for the taking.
But we have land here, Hans. Here we have 50 morgen of land on our valley.
50 morgen. 50 morgen. 30 acres. 1 daughter and 5 sons, Anna. How shall we pay our daughter's dowry? When we die, we leave 10 morgen of land to a son. Can a man live on 10 morgen of land?
But we are poor with a large family, Hans.
Poor we are, peasants we are. But in America, a farmer with a family of stout sons, he is his own master, Anna. He need not long be poor.
We are not so bad off as the Jews. And the sea, Hans. We are not English to go by the sea.
Quiet, woman. If we must go by the sea, we go by the sea.
I am afraid, Hans.
Afraid or not, we go. Here is nothing. There is hope for us and for our sons.
But, Hans...
No buts. Where I go, you go. So stands it in the Bible.
Yes, Hans.
Tomorrow we tell the boys. They will like it, so...
Oh, Hans, God help us. God guide us. God be with us to America.
The years from 1815 to 1819 are desperate years in Europe. The immigrants departing, still comparatively few, are apt to be single individuals, the strongest member of the family venturing first, many having pledged their labor in advance for bare Atlantic passage. The number of immigrants entering America before 1820 is perhaps 5,000 to 6,000 a year. By 1846, it has become 90,000 a year. The aftermath of war on the continent, the ruthless exploitation of the Industrial Revolution in England, and as Malthus, the social philosopher, noted, an ever-rising pressure of population on food supply. All these are the lot of the European common man. Yet in one area of Western Europe, in one area more than any other, A complex of tensions is a smoldering fuse burning closer and closer toward the inevitable explosion.
In 1700, the population of Ireland is 1,350,000.
By 1841, the population is 8,175,000.
Half the Irish land holdings are patches smaller than 3 acres, less than 1/3 of the area of a Chicago city block.
Uprisings, military and political, through the smoldering decades from 1797 to 1843.
This is the background of a tortured land. This is a magazine of hate and hunger. Until in 1846, the creeping fuse touches off the explosion. The Irish Famine.
Traveling from Cork to Dublin in July of 1846, I saw the potato patches in bloom and rejoiced at the abundance of the coming harvest after the crop failure of 1845, following a winter of deep distress and in some parts near starvation. It seemed our peasants might survive 1 year of potato failure. They could never survive 2. Returning a week later, I saw the same fields, one wide waste of putrefying vegetation. For a while, a certain calmness prevailed among our people, and then came panic and terror, and then a burning hate, and at the last, a sullen resignation.
This is an Irish priest, Father Matthew, writing as an eyewitness in the famine year. Yet one famine is like all famines. One comment may stand for them all. It is the comment of the nameless peasant who said,
"This is the end of the world with us."
As Professor Hansen has noted in his book, The Atlantic Migration,
whole families took the roads, straying from parish to parish, leaving the enfeebled old and young to perish by the wayside. Many escaped actual starvation by dying of famine fever, a form of typhus preying on a folk already weak from hunger. The dead were buried, unrecorded, in pits. Probably few of those who emigrated in 1847 reasoned consciously regarding their state. A curse seemed on the land. Their impulse was simply to get away. Even aboard the wretched immigrant ships, typhus fattened upon the starving.
among the poorest peasants, the families longest exposed to destitution and disease, the shipboard death rate is fearful. Below decks in the huddled vessel, the crying of children, the wailing of women over the newly dead. And above the roll of the long Atlantic swells...
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb.
On deck, above the creaking of taut cordage, and under the driving press of Yankee sail...
What's that they're saying below? I mean, the people.
That's the rosary, mister. There's 4 died this day. That's prayers for the dead, for us.
Oh, Catholic prayers, huh?
What kind would ye have us say, mister?
Your own kind, I guess. There's no call to call me mister. I'm a sailor. I ain't used to that mister exactly.
Oh. Is that no mister the custom in America?
Mostly it is. Call a man mister if you feel like. Don't if you don't.
It's different where I come from.
Reckon so. Anybody to meet you on the other side?
No.
You landing alone?
I'm alone.
Any particular place you bound for?
No. America, that's all. Oh, I've enough shillings to get ashore.
Can you work at something special? Carpenter, wheelwright, blacksmith, stonemason, such like? Have you tools for any trade?
My hands. They're strong hands. I'll work. Oh, I'm over the fever.
Tarnation take it. I don't know.
They'll be letting me ashore, surely. Because I've no trade, no money. They'll not be sending me back there. Oh, they'll not...
No. You can land right enough. Only you'll find some Americans don't like, well, foreigners. Liable to treat you nasty.
We'll play our part and we'll ask no favor. And as for the Americans not liking our speech and notions and religion, oh, almighty God, you've no idea what it's like back there.
In 1847, the tide of Irish immigration begins. Within 10 years, more than 1,500,000 immigrants from the one small island alone win through to the seaports, the cities, the towns, and villages of America. And the Irish immigration is but one component of a stream which has become a living tide. The German mass migration begins just 2 years later in response to the basic European pressures of hunger, oppression, and hope, and repeats almost exactly the numbers and significance of the Celtic exodus. Music on many an immigrant dock as the German immigrants hail and farewell at Bremen, Hamburg, Antwerp, and Le Havre. Bright peasant costumes and solemn faces, workers with calloused hands, artisans humble and worried, political refugees bitter against the old ways begin the great adventure. Between the years 1847 and 1856, no fewer than 3 million immigrants, German and Irish, enter the New World in one brief decade, twice the number recorded during the preceding 70 years. Shipmasters in the carrying trade, brisk agents for the American rail lines, contract employers of cheap European labor, are quick to sense the trend and profit by the tide of the greatest human migration in the world's history. To the lure of hope and hearsay is added a persuasive and persistent propaganda.
You see, our ship's clear out of Canada. Bring timber over, settlers back. Now, because of the volume of business, the fare is down. Used to be, passage was 8 or 10 pounds. I can let you have passage for 2 pounds, 10 shillings. Oh, the food's the finest. American. You can't beat it.
Why, friend, the southern cotton trades from Charleston and New Orleans to Liverpool, vessels insured, American sailors fastest in the world, and rapid, commodious, pleasant passage to the interior. We can arrange that, too. There'll be a trifling extra charge, of course.
Read the papers, booklets, posters everywhere. Philadelphia is the chief port of the tobacco trade. On the voyage, you will speak German with your friends. By Bremerhaven is a special lodging house in which you wait for your ship. The Atlantic? Like a mill pond. In signing this special work contract, why, you have a job the day you land.
Misrepresentation? Yes. Sharp practice? Frequently. Abuses, confusion, hardship, downright fraud. These existed certainly. But the tide swells to the full in the 1850s. The vanguard of the Great Migration has already dared the ocean. And from them to Europe and the British Isles, the voices of common folk report on the new land. They are words laboriously written by hands unused to the pen. Words carefully weighed when a family, a village, a community await the immigrant's letter. These are the common man's documentation of the common man's utopia. These are the letters more persuasive than any propaganda.
Tell Thomas McAndrew to come to America. Tell him to leave off his strap what he wears when he has nothing to eat for some half-starved shepherd slave. Tell Miriam Laura here there's no sending a husband to work without breakfast and no sending children to the bed without supper.
I do not deny we have certain kinds of vermin in America. There are plenty of common flies and other insects, but nothing to hurt you. I have found no insect so harmful as the old Texas and the old Tories of England.
To the Monarch community at Frankfurt, 3 years ago, Solomon began as peddler with a pack. Today, we own a small store. This year, Hyman begins college to be a doctor. We give thanks from full hearts. We have at last our American papers.
Our work is building railroads and canals, and there's plenty of work for all. Our fare includes beef and pork and coffee or tea for breakfast and supper. I have enlisted in a militia company and bear arms as well as the next. Had I my brother here, I'd count myself the happiest of men.
There is no king here. There's no passport required to go from town to town. There are no tithes for the clergy.
Our daughter Clara is married, and we pay no dowry. Our farm by us is more as 250 morgen, 160 acres. We own 8 horses.
As regards the project of which you write, a project to come with a German community from there to settle in a German community here, I advise you most earnestly not to join such a project. The sooner you break with the old ways, the better. He goes better in America who relies on himself. He goes farthest in America who works for his family alone.
Of the Atlantic migration, Professor Hansen wrote,
In America, between the closing of the Napoleonic War and the outbreak of the First World War, the common man discovers the common man's utopia. 3 great movements of peoples distinguish the coming of 35 millions of immigrants to America between 1815 and 1914. The first wave was predominantly Celtic in language, blood, and social institution. The second was predominantly Teutonic, English, German, Scandinavian. The third wave, coming some decades later and ending only with the outbreak of the First World War, was made up of Slavic and Mediterranean peoples. My first volume ends with the ending of the Civil War. I propose to devote the second and third volumes of the trilogy I have begun to a further study of the more recent comings of European peoples.
The study proposed by Professor Hansen is never completed. On May 11, 1938, his untimely death cut short a brilliant career of university scholarship. But the field remains. Future scholars will continue his researches. The real America remains. The world will again and again draw upon the traditions of courage and fortitude builded by her immigrants into the present and future of the American Republic. And the ideal remains. One nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Human Adventure is jointly presented by the Mutual Broadcasting System and the University of Chicago. Selected programs are transcribed for rebroadcast for the overseas networks of the Armed Forces Radio Service. Music was by Kenneth Churchill. The conductor, Henry Weber. The writer, in cooperation with the University of Chicago, Francis Coughlin. The director, Morrison Wood. 1 week from tonight, the Human Adventure will present 2 Canterbury Tales.
That's next Wednesday night, January 9th, 2 Canterbury Tales.
This is the Mutual Broadcasting System.